Intervals are the building blocks of music. It's sort of the DNA strand material, the atomic level information for music. An interval is basically the distance between two notes, any two notes. Sonically, that's a distance, that's an interval. So, the distance from this note to this note, or this note to that note. All chords are stacked intervals being played at once. Melodies are just intervals being played over time. Right? So it's very important information, right? It's building block stuff. As guitarists, we have the opportunity and possibly also the burden to be able to see intervals in two dimensions. If you think of a piano, you play a note and you play another note, and the distance is whatever the distance is. You can see it in this linear dimension. We can see that on the guitar. This note is this far from this note, right? We see it just like a piano player does. But when we look across the strings, this interval becomes this shape, right? We're seeing it in multiple dimensions. We can see intervals this way as well as this way. This is one of the primary reasons that applying new information or applying music theory or methodology onto this instrument appears to be harder than it needs to be. Welcome back to the channel. My name's Chris. Today you will learn how to invert intervals. We're going to be doing diatonic intervals, and I'll explain this in a second. I'm going to explain what inverting intervals is. I'm going to show you how to find them and visualize them on the neck, and we're going to spend some time listening to them and hearing what they sound like as we invert them. We're going to be doing diatonic intervals, and diatonic means of a key, from a single key. You can also invert chromatic intervals, but what we really want to focus on here is this very interesting phenomenon. When you invert an interval, let's say this is an octave, okay? And we want to hear the major third, which is down here, root 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, this is the depth of the octave. Here's our major third. If we take the root and put it up here, now the distance is different, right? It was a small distance and now it's a long distance. But diatonically, meaning in the key, those two notes still have the exact same relationship, even though the distance has changed, and even though, as you'll see, the timbre, the sound of the interval changes as you invert it. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to be taking that A note. In other words, we're going to be in the tonal center, sort of the key of A. We're going to be taking that A note and going through all the intervals in the scale, the major scale from A. And we're going to be playing them at the same time, two notes, the A and then whatever interval we're thinking about. We're going to play it once. We're going to play these as dyads, two notes at the same time. We'll play them once, and then we'll take the root and we'll take it up an octave and invert the interval. See what happens on the neck. See what happens visually and hear what happens to the interval itself as it inverts. Let me show you how this works. Okay, let's invert some intervals. We're going to be in the key of A. We're going to number these puppies. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1. 1 is the root. Root 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, root. I'm going to put that scale right here on the screen. We're going to be using this to watch these intervals invert. And what we're going to do here is we're going to play the root, and then each one of those consecutive notes, the 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, together as dyads. Dyads are two notes played at the same time. And we're going to do each one of the intervals twice. Once with the root on the bottom, and then we're going to invert the interval and put the root on the top. Hear what it sounds like, hear the difference, look at the distance change, and then realize also that the actual interval, the sonic relationship, hasn't actually changed. The timbre changes, the geometry changes, but the relationship is the same. Fascinating stuff. Okay, here's our A major scale. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, root. And now we're going to just start applying these dyads. Intervals, one at a time. First one is the 2. 1, 2. This B note, A, B, has to be found here on the second fret of the A string. Here's the interval as a dyad. Now we're not going to pay attention to how horrible this interval actually sounds. But there it is, root on the bottom. Now we take the root up an octave. We're going to find the B somewhere else, which is right here. That's the same interval inverted. And as you can see, the distance has changed. Even though the notes are the same, right? That root went up an octave, changed the distance, but the relationship, the diatonic relationship, hasn't changed. Fascinating. Let's go to the next one, which is the third. 1, 2, 3. Here's the third. Take the root up an octave, leave the other note the same. So here it is root on the bottom, here it is root on the top. See how the distance is changing? Next one is the fourth. Root on the bottom, perfect fourth. Take the root up an octave. There you have that. See how the interval is inverting? Next one is the fifth. Root on the bottom. Take the root up an octave. This is the perfect fifth, root on the top. Here's the sixth. Take the root up an octave. I have to shift this note out. This is the sixth, root on the top. Here's our seventh degree. Again, not paying attention to how horrible this interval is. Root on the bottom. Take the root up an octave. That's root on the top. And then hopefully we need to get a little bit of sonic dental floss there. Get all the particles out. I'm going to play those again for you, just consecutively. Each interval, root on the bottom, root on the top. Here we go, nice and slow. Well, I find this fascinating. Diatonic intervals. These relationships don't change, even when the intervals invert. And when the intervals invert, they sound different, but the relationship is exactly the same. That's fascinating. When you look at the guitar in this way, and you start to unpack how this instrument is designed to facilitate the 12-tone system, the sort of Western musical system, it becomes very, very fascinating. And again, just looking at the guitar this way and doing this type of investigative, sort of discovery puts you sort of directly inside the design of the instrument, right? You are thinking about the instrument and looking at the instrument exactly the way it was designed. And this type of discovery and sort of musical archaeology makes attaching and incorporating new information onto the instrument much, much easier. I hope you enjoy this. I've tabbed it all out if you're interested. The tabs are on Patreon and I've linked those in the description below. Head on over there if you'd like to grab them. I hope this piques your curiosity and gets you interested. When you are operating inside the design of the instrument, it becomes, nothing is too mysterious. It sort of like blows all the fog and mystery out of it. I hope you find this interesting and I hope it helps. And I'll see you next time.